Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to The Revolution. I'm Megan Connor, your host, and I am going to be recapping closing statements in the Brian Walshe trial that happened this morning. Now, just a couple of minutes ago, the judge went ahead and released the jury for the weekend. She said that every afternoon at 4 o'clock, it's her custom to send a note to the jurors asking if they want to stay until 4:30 or if they want to come back and deliberate the next day. They chose the latter. So they will be coming back Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. They started deliberating at 2:22 Eastern time today, and so far, no verdict, obviously. Hey there, E.T. Lizard. Hey there, Kiki. Good to see you guys. I wanted to come back and recap closing statements since I didn't get a chance to do that earlier when I was on with Kirsten. And there are some things that I wanted to point out from closing statements before I say goodbye to this case for the day. I think I'm going to take the rest of the day and just decompress a little bit. It's been a lot these last couple of days. So I want to say in this Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they do things just a little bit differently than in other states. In other states, specifically the states that I've observed, Idaho, Arizona, Texas, typically they allow the prosecution to give their closing statement first, then the defense, and then the prosecution gets a rebuttal. Hey there, D-Max. Good to see you from Ireland. I hope weather is lovely there. But in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, what they do instead is they allow the defense to go first with their closing statement so that the Commonwealth has the last word. So the defense went first in this case. And, you know, this defense attorney has done a decent job of trying to bring in reasonable doubt, poke holes where he possibly could. I think he was very disappointed that his client decided not to testify. I think he believed that was their only chance of an acquittal. But he began talking about the presumption of innocence, that we must presume. Actually, that was the judge. Forgive me. First, the judge gave some instructions. She said we must begin with the presumption of innocence, and then she talked a little bit about reasonable doubt and what that means. It's not beyond all possible doubt. It's that at the end of the day, you have an abiding conviction to a moral certainty that the charge is true. Hi there, Judy girl. Flooded there in Washington. Sorry to hear that. Then she talked about that there was only one charge being brought in this case, and that's the charge of murder. And there are only two options there, either first degree or second degree murder. That first degree is deliberate premeditation of murder. And that's the standard for first degree murder. And it has to meet three elements. The first is that the defendant caused the death of Ana Walshe. The second element is that the defendant intended to kill. He consciously and purposely took action that would result in the death of Ana Walshe. And that number three element is deliberate premeditation. In other words, took time to consider the consequences or consider the outcome before they took action. Second degree murder only has two elements. The first element is that he caused the death of Ana Walshe. And then the second element has three parts to it. The first part is A, he intended to kill Ana Walshe. B is that he caused grievous bodily harm. That was another intentional thing. And then C is created a plain and strong, took action that would have created a plain and strong likelihood of death. And you don't have to have all three of those elements, but any one of the three would suffice for second degree murder. D-Max, this is interesting. We call it wet rain, which makes sense, but it's an overstatement. Well, here in Texas, it is misty and just gross outside. There is moisture coming down, but it's not rain. It's just gross. So the humidity is not very great in general, but I wish it would either rain or not rain. So I would take a wet rain right now. I definitely have some family history coming from Ireland as well with the last name of Connor. Anyway, then she said, it seems a little bit pedantic or like an overstatement, but we're going to talk about what death means. And she said that the legal definition of it in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is that the heart stops long enough to cause a complete loss of brain function. And she said, you have an obligation and a duty to consider the facts of the case and to come to a conclusion that is beyond a reasonable doubt. So then we got to the defense closing statement. And again, closing statements are not facts. They are not evidence, and they cannot be considered as such. And one of the instructions to the jury was, if you believe that a statement of an attorney represents the facts differently than you remember them, then you must go by what you remember, not by what was stated in the closing statement. So yes, I'm aware that you have lots of O'Connors there. Never had an O apostrophe before my name though. So anyway, the defense started out by just questioning what would cause a person to lie to police for 4 days, search for the unspeakable on the internet, dispose of a body, just kind of raised that question. That's a great question. We would love to know. Brian Walshe, could you tell us what would cause a person to do that? The defense said that there was no proof of an affair. He said that money could not have been a factor in this because that they had family money, that they were talking about these investments and the sales of houses and the proceeds. The money was for the family. He went on to say there was no motive and talked a little bit about the refusal to consider prison, which he said there was no proof that Brian Walshe was refusing to consider prison. He said there is evidence that he lied, that he searched the internet, that he disposed of body parts, but there's no proof of killing. And actually, he has a good point. There is no cause of death in this case. There's no body. And so we have to take some of this evidence as circumstantial and find facts based on that. D-Maxis is true. It's possible, but I don't think I remember that. And I've done some of my family history research. So I know there's some parts that are from England and stuff. Anyway. Hey there, Insightful One. Good to see you. Then he said he referred to Brian Walshe as a good father, talking about the amount of time that he spent with his children and saying that Ana Walshe even believed that he was a good father because he entrusted their 3 children to his care 24/7 while she was in Washington, D.C. He referred to Ana Walshe often as the woman he loved, which I always think is gross. He comes back to this idea of no motive all the time, but the judge pointed out in jury instructions that there doesn't have to be a motive. That's not one of the elements of determining guilt or innocence. Then the defense went on to this narrative that there was a sudden, unexpected event that resulted in confusion, panic, fear, disbelief, and horror. He said there is evidence that Brian Walshe feels guilty, but that guilt doesn't mean that he killed. He said he never killed Ana Walshe. He said you're going to look at some of the evidence which evokes emotion, but you can't base your verdict on sympathy, anger, or passion. He said a lot of the evidence is upsetting, it's terrifying, it's disgusting. He used a lot of adjectives in his closing statement. Then he talked about Jem Mutlu's testimony. He highlighted that Jem was confused. He asked, how could this happen? I don't understand. Then the defense attorney talked about the fact that there were searches that started at 4:53 a.m. on January 1st, how to dispose of a body. And he said that they evolved over time. And he said that it was logical that if you don't get the search results that you're looking for, that you change the wording. And he said that there were lots of searches about funeral parlors and cemeteries. But unfortunately, as I wrote in my margins over here, none of that came into evidence. The defense made the choice not to call any witnesses, and they could have made a case for funeral parlors and cemeteries and all of that, but that didn't come into evidence. Or at least those text messages were not, or that search history was not read in court. Now, it might be in the evidence, but why not bring it up in court and bring it in front of the jury if that's something that you want to be considered? I don't understand that part. Then he said the search history talked about cleaning up the basement, but you have to take it into context because there was no plan. He then talked about the knife, that there wasn't even any blood on the knife, which is not true. It did test positive for blood residue. There was no DNA on the knife. But he said, they pursued this story of the knife and then they lost interest in it, which I don't know why he said that, because they did go on to say that there was blood on the knife. That's really all that they could prove. It's not that they lost interest in it. Then he was on this BS about the trash compactor. And what he liked to try to say during the DNA testimony portion is that these bags were put into a trash compactor. They were mashed all together. And so we don't know where that came from, where that evidence came from, or how it got on those items. He said when they first were sifting through the trash, they just put it on the bare ground with no covering on the ground. And so how do we know that they didn't pick up something? The crime scene text talked about cross-contamination in lots of different ways. Then he said that there was no evidence that something violent happened in the house. He talked about the absence of blood spatter, and he talked about going through each room of the house and that there was nothing found in the main bedroom, in the main bathroom, in any of the upstairs bedrooms, not in the kitchen, not in the sinks, not in the drains. But there was blood on the carpet that got removed from the living room. There was no blood in the living room from what he said. And the red-brown stains on the curtains in the main bedroom turned out not to be blood. Then he also said that he talked about there being a threshold of 20 nanograms of blood needing to be present in order to get a positive result. And he said that's 1/10000000th of a gram. And he said those texts were all over the house. There were 10 people there on the 8th. There were 10 people there on the 9th. And, nobody found anything. Now, there were multiple bloodstains on the basement floor. He did kind of admit to that. The ceiling DMAX, I wonder if that was what the hole in the ceiling was about, if there were parts of the ceiling that were missing, because some of it was in the drawer in the main bedroom. But I wonder if it's possible that there was blood spatter on the ceiling and that got removed. No idea. Then they talked about, and this is something that I'm going to look this up real quick because, again, haven't done any research up to this point, although I did have an extensive conversation with Kirsten. If you haven't seen that yet, she revealed to me a lot of the backstory and behind the scenes information. And now I'm going to go do my own research. He talked about the hole in the ceiling. They brought it up. The prosecution brought it up, but it amounted to nothing. They talked about the casino search. They talked about songs and movies being searched. All of those things turned out to be insignificant, according to the defense attorney. That's what he wants us to believe. Hey there, Angel Eyes. How are you doing? Good to see you. Then he talked about the fact, this is what I wanted to look up, because the defense attorney alleged that the search for, quote, "I'm good," had to do with a movie. But that's not the first thing that comes up when I search for "I'm good." The first thing that comes up is a song by David Guetta. And I can't play it here without getting a copyright strike, but I will read the lyrics for you. I think you'll find this interesting. "I'm good, yeah, I'm feeling all right. Baby, I'ma have the best effing night of my life. And wherever it takes me, I'm down for the ride. Baby, don't you know I'm good, yeah, I'm feeling all right." And then that repeats a couple of times, several times, and that's pretty much the whole entire song. I want to point out, and I'm going to go to my little timeline over here. If you will give me one moment, I will share it with you so you can see it as well. And as I mentioned on my live with Kirsten, there were some things in the closing statements that reminded me I needed to revise my timeline because I did get a couple of things incorrect. But let's see if we can find where it was that Brian Walshe first searched "I'm good." "6:42 p.m. on the 2nd, Tuesday. This was after he had done all of the shopping. He went to Home Depot, he went to the Derby Street shops, he went to Stop and Shop, he went to Walgreens, and then he searched "I'm good" on his iPhone mini. Maybe he was listening to that song as he was driving home. But I just want to reiterate, I'm good. Yeah, I'm feeling all right. Baby, I'm going to have the best effing night of my life. And wherever it takes me, I'm down for the ride. Baby, don't you know I'm good? Yeah, I'm feeling all right. Not really something that someone would search if they were distraught over their missing wife. I don't know about you, but I tend to listen to music that matches the mood that I'm in or goes to the mood I want to be in sometimes. But I found that song choice really interesting. He probably searched that song on his phone so he could play it on the radio on the way home. I don't know, just a speculation on my part. Field Notes 2901, this is a good point. If Walshe had a Cohassett library card, he could have planned everything from the library computer. That's very true. But it also seems like he wasn't super good about clearing browser history. So I don't know if he would have felt comfortable doing that on a public computer where somebody could then visit it and see what he was searching. I don't know. I also don't know if the library card, if having a library card causes you to have to log in to the system. If you have your own login, then they can still trace exactly what you were searching for. So anyway, moving on. The defense attorney then talked about that first visit by police officers where they did look through the house. They went down into the basement and they saw trash bags sitting on the basement floor. He mentioned that the officer sort of pushed that trash bag with his boot and said that he thought that it was probably carpet, probably pieces of the rug. But the defense attorney said, but he didn't do anything about it. Well, at that point, they didn't have a search warrant. So if he had touched those bags or investigated what was in them, it would have made that all inadmissible because they didn't have a search warrant, unless Brian gave them permission to go through the bags. So I'm thinking that law enforcement officer probably said, this could be something or it could not be something, but, let me go get a warrant or let me see, what else there is before. And I don't know, I'm not an officer, so I don't know what the rules are, protocol and all that kind of stuff, but I'm just making conjecture that's possibly the reason why he didn't say anything about the bags when he first saw them. Then it says, then the defense attorney talked about the messages between Ana Walshe and Will Fasco. He said that his client made the mistake of referring to iMessenger when there is no such thing. It is iMessage or it is Facebook Messenger, but there's no such thing as iMessenger. I don't really know what the significance of that mistake is, but they were basically trying to say that Brian never saw messages between Ana Walshe and Will Fasco. We just don't know if that's true, to be honest with you. Then he said that there is no evidence that Brian Walshe reacted to Ana Walshe saying that she wanted to take a picture and send it to Will. Well, of course not. If he's planning to redrum her after the friend leaves, he's not going to get all angry and upset about a text message being sent to Will with a picture. What I think happened is that he waited till after the friend left, and then they had a conversation, and that's when he got upset. That's what my conjecture is. He said they went on to continue to have a jovial celebration, that Brian Walshe knew about the crush. And then he again started bringing up sudden, unexpected death, and that everything that he did after, 1:30 a.m. on New Year's Day was about protecting assets. He said everything in Washington, D.C. was in Ana Walshe's name because of Brian's court case, and they were trying to, quote, protect assets. Then he talked about the champagne box the fact that they signed this hopeful message on the outside of the champagne box, and that Ana Walshe was hopeful about their relationship and about their future together. Then he talked about the New Year's Day dinner where Brian had used his cell phone to make a reservation at this fancy restaurant in Marblehead, and that he used his credit card to pay in advance of $573.76 for this reservation. Then he did delete that text message because he realized that he wasn't going to be allowed to go to that dinner, and he did lie to his probation officer because he loved Ana Walshe and he wanted to go out to dinner with her on New Year's Day. Then he said, essentially, there's no evidence of premeditation and you need to find him not guilty. Then prosecution, it was her turn. Prosecution did an excellent job on this closing statement. It was immediately emotional and charged, and also they reminded us of all the really important evidence, including circumstantial evidence. They said Brian Walshe intended Ana Walshe's death. Ana Walshe never left her house on January 1st. There was never an emergency. She never said goodbye to her son. She said the rug had been in the living room over the wood floor. The floor had bloodstains on it. Her Gucci necklace was broken. And they found on that rug blood clots and flesh. There were 2 sets of DNA on the slippers, Brian's and Ana's. And he said she brought this up, and this was such a good point, and I'm so glad that she brought this up. Before he went to Lowe's to buy a hacksaw and a hatchet and cleaning supplies, his first stop was for Band-Aids and antibiotics. He had that cut on his thumb on the 9th when he was arrested. So he had already done some of this work of dismembering before he ever went to Lowe's to buy anything. And then law enforcement noted that there was a new rug on the floor. Ana Walshe achieved or received the highest health rating when she applied for life insurance. And knowing a little bit something about this, there are 2 things that affect the cost of your life insurance. One is your age, and the other is your health. And so if you are 39 years old and you're in excellent health, you're going to get the cheapest rate for life insurance. So that's the highest health rating. There was nothing wrong with Ana Walshe's health, he said. Brian Walshe cut her up and threw her in dumpsters. And what came to my mind as she was saying that is, if it is in fact the way that the defense framed it, where there was a sudden death, I can't imagine anybody who loved their spouse who would have cut them up and thrown them away like garbage. That's the bottom line for me. She said Ana was beginning to fly. She was moving up in the world. She had a high-paying job. She was on her own in Washington, D.C. And in the meantime, Brian Walshe was monitoring Brian Walshe had been in this court case where he was potentially facing prison time, and it was the opposite. Then she mentioned that Brian was monitoring the joint Chase account, and that's how he would have known about the affair, because he would have seen the tickets to Dublin for the Thanksgiving holiday, and he mentioned over and over and over how angry he was about Ana missing Thanksgiving and then Ana missing Christmas. The first time that he looked up Will Fasco's name was on December 25th, and then he immediately started looking up divorces the next day. She said Brian Walshe had nothing without Ana. On December 29th, when Ana was speaking to Jem, she said she was upset. And then that same night when she went out with her friend Alyssa, she broke down. Alyssa said that she broke down over the difficulties that were happening in her relationship. She wanted Brian to take responsibility by going to jail, and she said she was falling out of love with Brian. Then Brian Walshe was looking up the FBI raid on the Mazza building. He was inventing a reason for a work emergency for Ana to have to go back to Washington, D.C. early. Brian Walshe, of course he wasn't angry. Of course he didn't act agitated or upset because he was lulling her into thinking everything was okay. That was chilling. Then on December 31st, he claimed that he was missing his phone, which allowed him to be unavailable for 2 days. He said he didn't want there to be a third holiday when Ana Walshe was giving her attention to another man. She missed Thanksgiving, she missed Christmas, and then she was sending text messages to Will Fasco. When he was being interviewed by police on the 8th, his demeanor changed when they brought up the fact that there were these searches on the on the iPad. It wasn't that he was concerned that his son had been searching disturbing things. It was that he didn't realize that he was logged in to both devices. And so when he was searching on his laptop, it was syncing with the Mini. Buff Snelda, I can't wait to do my deep dive as well. It's going to start today. I know I'm not going to be able to to resist. Good to see you, Jesse. And I think I already said hi, but hi to Nina, Canadian. And Field Notes 2901. I worry that Massachusetts law enforcement needs a PR firm. The damage done by the retrial will leave a stain for a long time. I didn't dig into that trial specifically for reasons, but I did note there was a lot of it was a mess. It was definitely a mess. Then this was the part that made me angry, and I've talked about this before. Brian Walshe involved their 6-year-old son when he said that his son saw his mom get into an Uber and leave on January 1st. Then he involved the 4-year-old son when he claimed that the 4-year-old hid his phone. That was gross to me. So disgusting that he brought his kids into that. Then he told police, he lied to police, telling them that he had no plans on January 1st. If he really intended to take Ana Walshe to that dinner reservation, then he should have told the police that he had that. He canceled the reservation in a text message, which he then deleted because we know that the cell phone, his own cell phone, the iPhone 13 mini, was unlocked just before he deleted that text message, even though that phone was supposed to have been missing at the time. So even though he claimed that his phone was missing, he still had access to the iPhone SE, and he still had access to Ana Walshe's phone while his was missing. Then we listened to some recordings playing of Brian Walshe during those interviews, and I just noted to myself again how they would ask him a simple question that would have taken a short answer, and Brian Walshe just went on and on with his word salad. He would clear his throat. He was clearly uncomfortable, clearly trying to make things up, in my opinion. Then Brian Walshe said that Ana Walshe had taken her phone upstairs on New Year's Eve and come back downstairs without her phone, which we know is not true because Jem said that she was using it all night. And then when you see him coming into the Lowe's, he's wearing a mask, he's wearing gloves. He has a list with him. He's calm. He pays in cash. He's not panicked. There's no fear. There's no confusion. That was a very good point. When you listen to him talk in the police interviews, he doesn't sound sad. He seems calm. He seems rational. He's not upset. He's not frustrated. He's not worried. Then we hear him leave a voicemail at Tishman Spire. And we heard him leave a voicemail with Will Fasco, in which he was calm. He was methodical. And then they brought up the text on January 2nd, where he sent a text from his phone to Ana Walshe's phone saying, "I still love you, haha." He was deliberate about setting this narrative, this false narrative that Ana was missing. So I thought those were some really excellent points. And for me, in my deliberation, which I already did with Kirsten, but I'll just bring up one more time this timeline. For me, what really sealed the deal was the fact that the first time that he searched Will Fasco's name was on Christmas Day. And when we look at the fact that, Anna's missing on Christmas Day, it's the second holiday that she's missing. He texts her, he doesn't hear from her until Anna texts him at 12:57 p.m. My flight got canceled driving up. This whole time she's been missing. Brian Walshe is searching. The first thing that he searched, the first thing they told us about was that he searched Will Fasto. He searched Ana Walshe Tishman Spire. He searched Christmas Day plane crash. Searches Anna's boss at Tishman Spire. Searches Ana Walshe found dead. Then the next day, or actually 2 days later, he's on Pornhub in the middle of the night, and then he is searching divorce strategies later in the day. My speculation is that he talked to his mom about getting a divorce, and then mom said, you can't do that. She's going to take the kids. She's going to take all your money. You won't have anything. Then he's searching the Mazza building and the Crossing building, inventing this idea of having to go back early. Then on Sunday, the 31st, they have that New Year's Eve celebration together. And then my speculation is that Brian was so angry and so wounded, narcissistically wounded by the fact that Anna was with another man, that she was successful, that she was doing great on all of these transactions. And Brian really had nothing. He had been shamed. His mom was paying all of his bills. And if Anna left him, he wouldn't have anything at all. And so I think that was when he sort of, his anger took over and he decided to take matters into his own hands. So Angel Eyes, I'm not planning on doing a live tonight because the jury has been sent home for the weekend. I am just going to be, this is my recap of the closing statements and just my opinion that he should be found guilty of first-degree murder. And the rest of my weekend is going to involve, I'm going to do some recording of some other videos, which I'll be posting next week. I've already recorded Chad's letter number 5, which will go up this weekend. And then it's going to consist of some deep dive research into this case so that when we come back on Monday for jury watch, for verdict watch, I can have some, deep dive information to share with you guys on Monday, hopefully get all of that shared with you before we come out with a verdict. And I'm predicting the verdict is probably going to come at the end of the day on Monday or early in the day on Tuesday. That's my prediction. I'm glad you guys have been here with me as I've been a fake juror on this case. I kind of like this angle. There are definitely pros and cons to it though. So I'm curious. I've got a couple more cases that I'm really interested in covering. I'm curious to hear you guys share with me in the comments what you would like to see me cover next. And if you like this angle of the fake juror, or if you prefer the deep dives in advance and during the case, let me know what you think. And I will look forward to seeing you very soon. Have a wonderful weekend. And please do the most loving thing for you. Take care.